Chris, one of the things that stands out right now for me with this January WWE television leading up to the Royal Rumble next month is how good of a job I think they're doing giving a long list of people a chance to make a believable case that this is their year to win the Royal Rumble. I don't think people are going to really buy Sami Zayn is going to win the Rumble, but you know what? I was listening to him talk, and without thinking about all the reasons he won't win and all the other, I was kind of like, oh, well, maybe he will win, and they're giving everybody their turn to do that. Last week we talked about how deep the Rumble was. It still feels that way. I think they're giving fans a story to believe in when it comes to who could win the Rumble. And if you're not thinking about it in a sense of, well, what does WWE need to headline WrestleMania? And how does WWE do these things? And you're just a fan watching, and you've got a favorite wrestler, it doesn't have to be one or two people this year who you go into the Rumble talking yourself into believing can win this thing. That's one of my top takeaways last week, and they reinforced it this week. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really important, and the WWE got away from this for a lot the last several years, but the people in the match, they all should want to win. Now, obviously, some are going to be more likely to win than others based on just the draw of the numbers and who's better, but it makes total sense for someone like Sami Zayn, who's been a mainstay on WWE TV for several years, to say, you know what, I've never won the Royal Rumble, and I want to be champion. And it actually helps him because he's a popular babyface, so a lot of people could believe in him, even though if you say his odds compared to CM Punk, Roman Reigns, Drew McIntyre are lower, he should want to win. That's what his character is, and going to say, oh, I want to be in the Royal Rumble just because, hey, why not? I was free that Saturday night. So I think it's very important that WWE has gotten back to many people being in the ring wanting to win and therefore being upset if the results don't go their way.
I think this is deliberate by Paul Levesque. I think Vince McMahon felt it didn't matter, or it didn't cross his mind that it was worth the effort to have other wrestlers tell their story. There was a undercurrent in Vince's booking, which is you never want to get fans excited about a babyface winning a match they're not going to win, which the counter to that then became a lot of matches became predictable. Or if they didn't, even just a simple title match on a TV show, sometimes they didn't let the babyface tell the story about how badly they wanted to win. And what it would mean for them to win. And in this case, I think it leads for grown-ups, especially, to enjoy the Rumble more. And again, not everybody's going to be looking at the Rumble like we do, where we can kind of whittle it down and go, okay, Stephanie Chase and I last Tuesday kind of looked at all the top opponent possibilities for the top tier wrestlers at WrestleMania and what that would mean, obviously for the Royal Rumble and the potential winners. We can do that and with some pretty good confidence whittle the list down to a shorter list than those who are getting promo time right now. But WWE, we look at 15,000 people in Dallas. They're selling these buildings out internationally on Netflix. Not everybody's looking at it the way we do as seasoned observers and analysts who also know booking patterns and understand what goes into booking decisions. Sometimes I think Vince just resigned himself to, people are going to know. Who cares? They'll still tune in and enjoy the story. So I don't know. We'll see if this holds up in future years, but it is better than, just knowing it's going to be one person who wins. I mean, basically, by the time the show comes around, we'll have it whittled down to 2 or 3 here, but I don't think you wave the white flag and just give up on fans buying others winning. I love Kevin Owens making his case. Sammy, you win. I want you to win. I see you as different than Cody, which that's a whole other thing. I thought, you can break down Kevin's promos and just be like, we thought all week about this, and there's just a Kevin Owens logic where you're kind of like, that kind of makes sense. Like Sammy's like, you're going to be mad at me like Cody. And he's like, no, Cody didn't have the history with Roman that you do. And so I'm more forgiving of you teaming with Roman and helping Roman than I am Cody. I hope you win a Rumble. And then I hope at WrestleMania, I'm champion and I'd love to defend against you. That's our childhood dream. And so they tapped into the Sammy KO history in creating even more of a story for what would happen if Sammy were to win. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I thought it was a really good element. Part of it because Kevin Owens thinks he's in the right, and so he can explain his action with Sami Zayn as being different than what he did with Cody Rhodes. And also the subtle, you have my back, trying to saying, hey,
yes,
maybe I need you to help me out in this match. Maybe I'll help you out in the Royal Rumble.
And that's why there's a comment in the chat from Junaid. I'll read that in a sec. But that's what's great about KO is you're watching, you're like, he's saying something that makes sense. He seems like a good friend. And then in the end, it turns out to be selfish, which is, I'd love to wrestle you. But help me. Maybe there'll be an opportunity for you to help me be champion so we can have this dream match. So all of a sudden there's this false pretense from KO, which is, Sammy, I'd love to headline WrestleMania against you. That'd be a dream. But the false pretense isn't that that's his dream. He's just trying to manipulate Sammy into helping him become champion. So Junaid said, Sammy was true to his character as a babyface with fired up, I want this, I don't need to win. On the other hand, he could turn heel by helping KO, but that is less likely. Chris, I don't think if he helped KO, it would necessarily be turning heel. I don't think he's going to help KO. Let me just establish that. But I think fans would forgive him and go, that's just Sammy doing what you got to do to win. I wouldn't love that if he cost Cody the championship to help KO, but I think in the WWE way of booking, that wouldn't necessarily be considered a heel turn. Your thoughts on all that?
I think it depends on how it went down. You kind of saw already Sami Zayn having plausible deniability for when he hit Seth Rollins at the main event. It would be based on how they did it. If someone else ran in and Sami Zayn ran out and then got involved, that'd be one thing. I think if no one else is running in and Cody's going to win and Sami Zayn for no reason just runs down and knocks him off the ladder, that would be pretty heelish. Yes. Yeah. You can be heelish, but not necessarily stay full-fledged heel. I think Sammy specifically is in a position where I think it would be hard to turn him at this point with everything he went through with the bloodline and the whole Montreal thing and just how people feel about him. But Kevin Owens, BJF says, Kevin always has great logic, but it's not coming from the right place. Lady B in the chat says the Kevin Owens segment was sponsored by gaslighting. I'm trying to think of that if what he did is technically gaslighting. I think it just was masterful false pretense. We're good friends. It'd be great to headline WrestleMania, but really I'm building up a case for you to help me win. In a sense, I guess it's gaslighting to make it seem like KO genuinely romanticizes his genuine friendship with Sammy after all the things he's done to him. And then KO always throws out the line like, I would be hypocritical of me to not forgive you given all the things that I've done to you, and I know that you've forgiven me for them. Just, Sammy and KO have feuded so much that sometimes people are like, okay, this is too much, too often. But it's been a while, and you get reminded again how good those two are when they play off each other, and tonight was another example of it. It's also an example of the positivity of having the brand split that another someone referenced in the chat that I mentioned with someone else. They haven't been around each other for a while, so we haven't really had that interaction before. But now the first time we have it in a while is this instance dealing with the WWE title and the Royal Rumble, so it makes it more important. Another comment from L Archer says, as someone going to the Rumble with friends who don't watch wrestling, these little stories like Sammy's help me explain and hype the Rumble simplistically, even if I know they won't win. That's the thing. You want to give people a story they can choose to believe in, naively believe in. If it enhances a casual fan's enjoyment, or even a non-fan who just wants to go to the spectacle, if there's a story, you're telling that story. That story makes the match more interesting, even if those of us watching here and listening to this podcast, largely know better. It's still worth doing because it's not all about us. There's a massive audience, unfortunately, who are not watching us, who are attending and watching on Netflix. We'd like everybody to watch us, but obviously there are people who, there's a lot of things I'm not into enough to listen to a podcast or watch a YouTube show about, but I really enjoy. And I know I'm not watching it with as much savvy as those who spend hours listening to, just diving in and immersing themselves in this kind of coverage. Let's pause. Let's introduce the show and set the table a little bit. And then we'll go to Jason D from Australia right away, because last Friday he was on hold for a while. We didn't get to him in time and he dropped off. So Jason, hold tight. We'll get to you in just a minute or two here. This is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show for Monday, January 20th, 2025. And I'm Wade Keller, host of the show, editor, publisher, and founder of the Pro Wrestling Torch Weekly newsletter and the website PWTorch.com. PWTorch is breaking news, flashbacks going back 5, 10, 20, sometimes 30 years with our TV reports, special editorials from a variety of talented writers, and also my live coverage of Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We have our TNA pay-per-view report up if you want to check that out on the website.
and so much more. PWTorch.com. Make it a daily stop, bookmark it, create a tab, whatever it is, and check it out every day. I also host various podcasts. Many of them are free, including the post shows like this, the Raw post show on the Wade Keller post show feed. I will also be by every Wednesday and Friday night covering Dynamite and SmackDown with co-hosts. We stream live on YouTube very shortly after the shows go off the air, within 2, 3, 4 minutes usually. So think of joining us live. If you watch Raw, Dynamite, or SmackDown live, you can watch our show there, and you can participate in the chat. You can, if you're a VIP member or Patreon supporter, you can call us. You can also email us at wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. Whether you watch live or not, you can participate in the show that way. Have your voice heard, rant, express an opinion, or ask us a question, or just suggest topics. wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. If you don't watch us live on YouTube, search Wade Keller on your podcast app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever iOS or Android app you use to listen to podcasts, and subscribe. Search Wade Keller. Subscribe to both the red brand, the post show, and also the blue logo that will pop up. That's our regular podcast. Tomorrow, Todd Martin, PWTorch VIP analyst, will be my co-host on a special or on our regular flagship edition, but we'll be recording on Tuesday this week, and including that Todd Martin's analysis as part of the flagship. I record The Fix with Todd Martin every week for VIP members. This week, we're simulcasting part of the show for everybody to hear. Todd's super sharp, strong opinions, and must listen. And so check it out tomorrow night on the Blue Logo Show. We are joined today on the post show by Chris Maitland, who is part of another PWTorch podcast feed, the PWTorch Daily Cast feed. Chris, welcome back to the Coast here. Great to have you tonight.
Thank you for having me. I host Wrestling Coast to Coast with my friend. We've been friends for apparently as long as Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. My good friend Justin McClellan went to college together. We host Wrestling Coast to Coast.
Have you turned on each other that often?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. No, I don't think in real life you can't be friends with someone for 25 years. You would just stop talking to each other, especially when you don't live in the same state or haven't lived in the same state. We live in the same state now. But we cover independent wrestling. Every week we review a different show. Last week, our show was actually a show we attended live. GCW's Thank Me Later, which took place in Columbus, Ohio, where I live now, and I'm not watching any football games that take place today. It was their last show before the big GCW return, the People versus GCW show that took place on Sunday. We will be reviewing that this week on our Wrestling Coast to Coast show. And that comes out usually Wednesday nights on the PWTorch Daily Cast app. Again, we review a different show every week, kind of have a different perspective on independent wrestling, and kind of see the wrestlers of the future and different stories that pop up.
So a different show every day of the week on the PWTorch Daily Cast feed. Just search PWTorch. There's a show dedicated to NXT, also AEW, WWE, the 90s Past Cast, our live post shows after pay-per-views and PLEs. Wrestling Night in America with Brandon LeClaire. Some best of episodes also. So yeah, check it out. Search PWTorch. All right. Let's keep rolling here with the show. And as I promised, we're going to Jason D from Australia, a popular regular caller for many, many, many years here on our live shows. Jason, welcome. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks, Wade. Good to speak to you. Good to speak to you as well, Chris. With this Raw, I really enjoyed this Raw. And as you were talking about Sami Zayn's segment, and for me, it doesn't really matter whether you buy into the person winning or not. It's about the fallout from them not winning the Royal Rumble. And I think that's what they're doing a good job. They're telling stories, and they're giving so many people, they're talking about how important it is to win the Royal Rumble. And then because we've been conditioned with the way they're telling the stories, we know that there's going to be important fallout from Sami Zayn not winning the Royal Rumble. And that's what I'm intrigued about, is that where they're going to go from here. So we've seen with Roman Reigns has been an important pivot for a lot of the wrestlers telling certain stories, branching off where they're siding with Roman. Now they're going to tell a story with the Royal Rumble leading into WrestleMania. So the way that I'm reading it, I mean, I think it is going to be Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn at WrestleMania. And Kevin Owens is going to blame Sami for the fact that it could have been for the championship. Now it's personal. So you can really see where they're heading with that. They're laying down the groundwork, and I'm excited to how they're going to get there.
I like that. I like a Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn WrestleMania match. This feels like good timing to do it. Kevin Owens has been given a bigger push with some real high-profile matches, a lot of TV time lately. Sami, of course, last couple of years has been, arguably or just indisputably, I guess, depending on your perspective, the best, most successful, most high profile 2-3 years of his career too. So yeah, that'd be fun. And I mean, if you're going to WrestleMania night 1 or 2 and you don't know which night that's going to be on, I can see some people targeting which night they go to because they just want to be there for that match, especially if they followed their careers as long going way back to pre-WWE and some of the companies that Chris covers on his podcast. Chris, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea to bring that storyline together, a reason for them to wrestle, not just simply dealing with Roman. I think that's really, as Jason mentioned, the power of the Royal Rumble. It's an easy way to create different stories and different people connecting and having a grievance with each other based on either one or both not achieving the goal that they sought out for. I think it's really important to emphasize that, and this is a way that they can do that with the two of them wrestling.
And for me, it seems, I know this would be weird to say this about these two, but actually seems fresh, because we've seen them wrestle so many times before, but it means that they've got such a great story coming out of it. And I think that's the important thing, is that it doesn't really matter yes, wins and losses do matter, but it's more about the story you tell as a result of the win or as a result of the loss, and not just sweeping it under the carpet, because then it means that every result is important. And that's what they seem to be doing here. Just on the back of Sami and Seth, I think you guys get a different feed to what I get when I'm watching Netflix. So when they went to a commercial break, did you guys see the Karrion Kross interview?
No, I did not. Okay. I probably should get the commercial-free version of Netflix one of these days, but I haven't gotten around to it. So no, I didn't see that during
one of the breaks, Karrion Kross had an interview and he talked to I'm pretty sure it was Jackie, and he talked about Sami Zayn, saying he doesn't think Sami Zayn believes what he's talking about, that he sort of flip-flops. He also mentioned that he wants to target Seth Rollins and CM Punk. So Karrion Kross is mentioning main event guys, and that's interesting because although I don't buy Karrion Kross as a main eventer in the ring, but I do enjoy his talking and the character that he portrays there, and just the kind of devil on the shoulder type of character that he's portraying, the little things that he brings up. So there has to be a reason why he's mentioning main event guys. So it's going to be interesting to see if he slowly gets pushed into that scene somewhat. I don't think they're going to go all the way, but that's just something to look out for too. So
let me jump in on that, Jason, before we move on to the next thing. My inclination right now, and Chris, I'm curious for your opinion on this, is it means nothing. They are just filling TV time, the commercial time, with something original, with someone who's standing around backstage. And so it's content in place of a commercial because it's live and they need to fill something. I guess I could just keep the camera pointed at whatever's going on in the arena. But I think if they were setting up Karrion Kross to do what Jason is suggesting might be the case, it would be on the main show that most people see, not just an international commercial-free feed or those who have the commercial-free tier. So my thinking is it's just filling TV time. It's not a bad thing. Maybe it leads somewhere because I think Kross has been in a good spot lately, but I don't think they're going to – it's sort of like with AEW where you say, like Cody Rhodes said, everything should be in that matters in AEW should be canon on Dynamite. Like you shouldn't be expected to watch anything else or be on social media or listen to a podcast that it should all be on Dynamite proper. I think anything that really matters on Raw and Netflix is going to be seen by 100% of the audience, and they're not going to reserve it for what I would call, at this stage of the game, sort of filler material for the commercial-free feed. Chris, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think especially with the time, they don't have the 3 hours anymore. They could have easily added that. I assume that promo was only maybe 2 or 3 minutes. They could have easily added that to the show at some point. And, again, they may do that later on or in subsequent weeks. Or next week, I guess we don't have that much time until the Rumble. I do like the idea, though. I think of it that he did mention that, I was not seeing the promo because, again, if he was going to win, assume that he was going to win, he probably would think I have to take these people out, and he wanted to be aware of them. So if it was something that ended up actually airing, it does make sense.
And by the way, Al Archer in the chat says it didn't feel like filler, Jason. So your thoughts on my interpretation of it, that if they wanted it to really count and was building to something, they would have put it for everybody to see.
I'm not sure because I don't know if someone can help me in the chat there. I'm pretty sure when Seth Rollins was backstage and Sami Zayn came up to him, somebody was in the background watching. I'm not sure if that was Kross or not, but I did notice someone I didn't get a chance to see. So
yeah, Fan Blast just backed you up. Said Kross was standing in the background when Seth and Sami were talking. So, maybe they are. Hey, here's the other thing too. They have Saturday Night's main events. They've got Raw. They've got SmackDown. They've got all these PLEs. They need matches, and we're gonna see. Like I thought, Seth drew it's a WrestleMania rematch. They framed it that way. If it weren't for Saturday Night's main event, we might have gotten a Raw main event that's one of the matches on Saturday Night's main event, but they have to give that to NBC. So now we end up with something that's sort of a slightly lower tier main event. It's weird to say that about Seth and Drew, but it doesn't feel fresh to me. It feels like something they did because they had to save the fresher first run matches for SNME. So, maybe the Kross thing will be something that they revisit, and it ends up turning into a match that helps fill a future episode of Raw. I mean, I certainly can't rule that out. Like I said, it's just me, interpreting what that I think if they're going to do something big with Kross, I think they want everybody to see it. But they could just recap that, next week and say, yeah, this Kross said this last week. Let's show you footage. And now the match is, Adam Pearce scheduled the match.
And in another one of the interviews, Ludwig Kaiser talked about Penta, saying he's not impressed by Penta. He's not impressed by anyone, and he wants to. So I think Ludwig Kaiser will be the next. Yeah, it's going to be the next opponent for Penta. Moving on,
Jason,
I like to see him. Yeah,
I don't want you to move on yet. I want to know what you think of Penta so far, Jason. After 2 weeks and the prospects of Ludwig Kaiser in week 3, which is definitely the toughest opponent for the biggest name that he had faced out of the 3 so far. What do you think of how Penta has looked and come across, and what do you think about how WWE has framed him?
Well, I think they've framed him as a big star, and so they should. I mean, like I've said before, I've ducked in and out of AEW. To me, I'm very, how can I say, superficial. Like if I like somebody's look, I'm all in on them. So, and I saw there's something about Penta. I don't know, maybe he reminds me a little bit of Lapaka. I always had a guilty pleasure with Lapaka back in WCW. I just like the look. So, but Penta has an obvious charisma to him. I like the look, and he can obviously go in the ring. I've liked what I've seen. It's interesting they've put him up against Chad Gable and Pete Dunne. People have a lot of respect for Chad Gable and Pete Dunne. I guess the hardcore wrestling fans, although they haven't been pushed too highly. So he's gotten 2 solid victories. To me, it's just all about, is he being treated like a star, and is he coming across like a star? And he is, and the crowd's getting behind him. Now he's obviously going to face Ludwig Kaiser, so another upper echelon heel. It all depends where they go from there. But for me, so far, so good.
And Chris, what do you think about Penta tonight? And how do you think you're doing with him after 2 weeks?
So far, so good. I think that, as I think someone in the chat mentioned, I've seen Penta cut promos in Independence. I know he did an Impact as well. They never had them cut one in AEW, so it was good the first week for him to be able to do that. I think they're doing a good job of establishing him with the crowd. I mean, I know last week there was a lot of discourse, and probably this week as well, was that he didn't, have this kind of Goldberg-esque very quick victory. But I don't think Penta is going to be a wrestler that someone mentions as who they need to beat in the Royal Rumble. I think he's going to be at a certain level, so he's not going to just go in and just destroy people. I think they're doing a really good job of establishing what he does in the ring, and the fans are getting behind him, even chanting for him in the ring when he was kind of, Dunn had a little bit of the advantage. So I think so far so good, and establishing him, and I think he's going to have another, whenever Rey Fenix comes, whoever that is, he's going to have another re-debut resurgence. But so far he's doing pretty well. Cool.
Jason, back to you. I think you're about to talk about CM Punk.
Yeah, I really enjoyed his promo, and interesting. If you like, it's like a Godfather reference there, settling all scores, collecting debts, and then calling in a favor or two. So this whole favor thing, this is what I'm intrigued by. What favor is he going to? What power does Paul Heyman have, and what favors he's going to grant CM Punk in order to get CM Punk where CM Punk feels like he needs to be? That's the intriguing part of me. But, a very good promo. Obviously, he mentioned Hulk Hogan throwing him out, and that got a big pop from the crowd. and I just got to ask, right, I'm just throwing it out there. obviously I know Hogan's not very popular with the WWE audience. If you're going to have him, can they get any, for lack of a better term, juice out of him from a heel point of view? Like, is there something that we can do here with him, or are we just going to completely ignore him or not put him on, or try and cover the boos, or try and figure out creative ways to make it seem like he's still getting cheered? Like, what can we do here with this, or do we just do nothing at all?
So Jesse Hyde in the chat says, CM Punk keeping it real on Hulk Hogan, even with Hogan's status set center its main event, and San Antonio is still unclear after what happened at the first Raw on Netflix. Chris, my take is WWE is smart enough, as I would frame it, to know that Hulk Hogan is toxic right now. And if they try to turn the rejection of him at the first Netflix into a money-making, ratings-drawing angle, fans are going to turn on WWE for doing that. Like, it will be the go-away, goodwill-draining type of heat that I think Paul Levesque is smart enough to ascertain is what fans are doing. This isn't, oh, it's fun to boo Hogan. This is, we really don't want him on our TV screen. And I think if they recast him in a way where it's like, oh, now it's fun to boo him, I don't think fans would find that fun either. So I get what Jason's saying. I mean, it's pro wrestling. You look for ways to monetize any kind of crowd passion. But to me, I can see that backfiring. And I think Levesque, I don't know how Paul Levesque feels about Hulk Hogan, the person. But as a businessman, he has to see the risk in looking like you're in the Hulk Hogan business when things are going so well. Why bother? Why, like, they're in a position where they don't.
Wait, they have his beer. They have his beer now. Like, they've gone all in on his business. Like, they're already there,
Well, they have, in the sense that there's a beer company paying them a lot of money to keep Hogan plugging his beer with a thing, but they don't have to then devise an additional storyline for him that justifies more TV time. I think they feel sort of like, well, we advertise him for SNME. He's in the promos. Well, plug our nose and get through that. But we're not going to come up with new stuff for him. That's my thinking. Chris, what do you think? I get what Jason's saying, but I think they don't want to be in the Hulk Hogan business, and they're not going to conjure up ways to try to monetize the crowd rejection of him right now.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I think they should not have been surprised that it happened. That's a whole thing for me where, you should know the play isn't going to work before you call it. It's a bad play. But also seeing what happened at the show 2 weeks ago, the debut, I don't see, WWE is not the other half of TKO. They don't lean into things that are going to be naturally divisive with parts of the audience. And they have such goodwill with people who are paying a lot of money to go to these shows. I don't think they're going to do that. I mean, they maybe try to bring Hogan back in smaller doses or different things. Maybe later in the year, they think there may be another time. But right now, I don't see them doing it. There's no reason for them to do it. It doesn't gain them anything. It just hurts them in the short term. So, yeah, I see them kind of staying clear for him right now.
Jason, do you think they should try to monetize Hogan?
It's not. I don't know. Because I'm just.
What if Paul Levesque is watching or listening on the flight and he's hanging on your opinion, and you can decide Hogan's fate? Do you or I shouldn't say Hogan's fate, but like, honestly, like if Levesque's like, I like this Jason guy, I really like his opinion. I want to know what he thinks. I'm teetering. What do you think he should do for the good of WWE?
Well, he probably shouldn't. But if you don't want to be in the Hulk Hogan business, why sign up with his beer? And then why is CM Punk deliberately mentioning him in a promo leading up to the Royal Rumble? He knows that's going to get a big pop. Like, if you're not going to be associated with someone or in the business, you wouldn't mention their name. I'm just saying, I think internally they're going back and forth on it. I think they're having discussions about, there's some heat here. Do we capitalize on this and use that heat to get someone else over? And I don't think they know where the heat's coming from. Is it big? I mean, no, they do know. They do know, right? But they don't know. I don't know. I'm just thinking, like, we obviously know the horrible comments that he made in the past, the racist comments, then the association with Trump or whatever. But then you can go back and forth on that because a lot of people are for him or whatever. I don't want to get dragged into that. That's your business. I'm in Australia. I want to get dragged into that. I'm just saying there's something there. There's a bit of heat. What do you do with it? And I think they're having a conversation about it, or at least thinking about it.
Yeah. I mean, Chris.
I only think the issue with that when it comes to those things is Hulk Hogan can't wrestle. So who's doing the wrestling for him? And how is that wrestler treated after this is over?
Yeah. Hogan's not getting in the. I mean, I guess he could like. I mean, Hogan did that interview from the entry area because he can barely walk. Like now, maybe that was just a bad day, and maybe he has better days. I don't know. I mean, Andre got a ride to the ring at WrestleMania 3. Maybe Hogan gets a ride to the ring in San Antonio and enters the ring, but he's not taking a bump over the top rope. So that it's a great point from Chris. Like, what is the payoff? What, Hogan come out and going, brother, I got Matt Morgan out of retirement. He's my protege 10 years ago, and now I'm gonna. I mean, 15 years ago, I guess. Has it? No. Has it been? Yeah, that was
2009. Yeah, was it?
Yeah, God, that's crazy. Yeah, I was just thinking,
16 years ago.
Yeah, wow.
Jeez.
I gave this guy my robe, and he's going to enter the Rumble on my behalf. I shouldn't give them ideas because my vote would be don't do business with Hogan beyond the bare minimum, which is a brief nostalgia act for Saturday's main event because you already advertised him. You can go through with it, minimize it, and then take the beer company's money because the sales department signed that deal. I don't, but anything beyond that, I think fans are going to go, they don't feel about Hogan the way I do. That's my thinking.
If I was going to team him, sorry, Chris.
Go ahead.
I'm very nervous about American Made's fascination with luchadors. That concerns me on how that could go. But
in what sense?
Chad Gable is very obsessed with wrestling luchadors, beating luchadors, as opposed to just winning matches.
Okay.
I'm just
Gotcha.
that could be a concern for me. I'll leave it there.
Yep. And is that tied to Hogan?
Yes.
Like I'm
yes.
Got it. That just connected the dot for just to lock it in. All right, Jason, go ahead.
If you're going to put Hogan with anyone, you put him with Logan Paul.
Yeah.
Think about.
Logan. Knowing Logan's, what he's showing of himself. I don't think he would reject it. I mean, he might, but I can't out of hand think that. Oh no, Logan would find that bad for his brand. I think he might embrace it. So yeah. All right, you get him. I gave him a bad idea, Jason. You gave them a more viable, I guess, idea than Matt Morgan. Anyway.
Right.
Go ahead.
Moving on then.
Yes.
Moving on. With the Gunther and Jey Uso match, I think Jey Uso had a really good comeback to Gunther calling him the mascot. And he said, yeah, I'm the mascot, but these people are my team. I thought that was such a great line from a babyface. And that's a bit of a criticism about Jey. You know what I mean? Like, is he a bit of a mascot? Is it all, we know he's over and everything, but to have that line, and I don't think anyone believes that he's going to defeat Gunther, but it does give people a reason to get behind him. So I think they're doing a good enough job there with what's coming up. And then you've got, other matches like Nia Jax versus Rhea Ripley. Really saw that. I saw it firsthand here in Australia, here in Perth. I think no one's buying that Nia Jax is going to defeat Rhea Ripley. It's just an obstacle for Rhea to overcome. And then Sheamus and Braun Breaker again. How many times can you tell this story with Sheamus that he's going to come up short for the Intercontinental Championship? So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that particular matchup. Mm-hmm. But, look, overall, it's like I said, it's sort of Saturday night's main event. It's like it's come at the wrong time. And only like a week before the Royal Rumble. It's very weird. So they're just putting in matches to fill in gaps. So, I'm looking forward to the event. But whether we're going to see anything drastic happen here, I'm not quite sure. I will say this, and now, Chris, you're a New York guy, aren't you?
I'm from.
Is that right?
I currently live in Columbus, Ohio, but I am born and raised in New York. But I still consider myself a New Yorker.
All right. So I'm reluctant to bring this up, right? But I have heard rumors, right, that in the Royal Rumble, and I'm sure you've read something, we don't know how true it is, that The Rock could come in as number 31. Like, we've seen something about, is something going to happen where somebody comes in as number 31? I'm just going to say, if you're going to come in as number 31, there's no better place to do it than Indianapolis, where my favorite player, Reggie Miller, made number 31 famous. I'm just saying.
Wow, that was harsh.
Hey, man.
They committed a foul on that horrible refereeing in that sequence. By the way, Reggie Miller, there's an article I read a couple years ago, maybe one of the more overrated players in the Hall of Fame, but that's a whole different issue.
Oh, come on, man. Now you
true Knicks fan talking.
But he's the only reason why I go for the Pacers. I mean, that whole 90s thing was just, that's a heel. That was tremendous. that whole thing. That's a wrestling storyline. So sorry, I just wanted to divert a little bit there. But Wade, on a more bigger note, how, just from a pure business point of view, how can WWE sustain this? I mean, they're getting 56,000 people for a Royal Rumble. I mean, you've followed the industry for so many years. I mean, they're just on this amazing run. 15,000 at Raw, 50,000 for a Royal Rumble, sellout after sellout after sellout. Your vibe and what you're feeling, can they maintain this momentum?
I mean, history says it will run out. You know, how many weeks before they make a mistake, or 2 or 3 or 20, out of arrogance, complacency, riding a wave?
Wade, what mistake would that be? Like, what have we learned where you got all this momentum? What booking mistake can they make?
Yeah, so when a product is hot, you sort of look at it and you go, well, this just is like sort of self-sustaining. I mean, these wrestlers are over, they're popular, they're talented, fans love them. But anything that's new and exciting eventually isn't. You know, like there's like national, you don't know this stuff, Jason. Well, you have like Deal or No Deal in Australia, because they re-air it on Deal or No. It was huge here, like, you know, whatever, 15 years ago or whatever it was. And it was, but then it was, and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire with Regis Philbin. Yep. And it was really big. And you're like, this show could last as long as Price is Right or Jeopardy. But then they put it on 3 nights a week and 2-hour specials. And then and eventually the ratings go down because it's not new and shiny. People get their fill. So I think the risk for WWE, and that's why, by the way, I think it's really news. I think it's an underrated news story that the last 2 weeks, they went 2.5 hours with a couple, maybe 2-3 minutes over the last 2 weeks. They are not going to 3 or 3 hours and 15 minutes. They are in a sweet spot right now. I think we've learned, maybe, I mean, I'm leaning more towards it now than I was a week ago and 2 weeks ago. Paul Levesque's reference 2 weeks ago after the original Netflix was, we're shooting for a certain average. We don't have a hard out. Well, I think that average is 2.5 hours. That's going to help them not be overexposed. Now, 2 hours would help even more, or 2 hours, 10 minutes would help even more. And then SmackDown is 3 hours temporarily. It's more favored USA Network, and they're developing a new show to put on after SmackDown, but they didn't have anything in the meantime. So, like, give us 3 hours, it'll help us. So the key is don't overexpose the product. AEW did that with Collision after adding Rampage, and then the Battle of the Belts that nobody cared about and they put no thought into, and then expanding their pay-per-views. Going back further, we had that. I don't know if TNA ever paid a price for going to 2 hours. I think that kind of made sense, but they didn't do a third and fourth show that they pushed at the same time. And then you go back to WCW and Thunder and Nitro. I mean, Eric Bischoff told me in that interview, God, it's almost 20 years ago now. You know, like a 5-hour interview with him, just going real in depth on things. Biggest mistake he made was saying not pushing back for harder on Time Warner AOL executives wanting more TV content. He regrets not pushing back harder because he says in retrospect, I believe him that it crossed his mind for sure. This is going to stretch us thin. So going full circle back to your question, I think WWE has to worry about overexposure. And when you watch tonight and you see Drew and Seth, maybe people were super excited about that match because it's a WrestleMania rematch and Seth and Drew are big stars. But I think if you, and they're not going to have to feed the Saturday night's main event monster all the time. Like, that's not a monthly thing. So we're just facing that now. But I think Saturday night's main event pulled Braun Breaker and Sheamus, for instance, and Nia Jax and Rhea Ripley from a Raw main event to that. So now you have to go to the next best match. So in the long run, they might be overexposed, and it just becomes less novel. The whole Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Deal or No Deal. It's like, it was really fun when it was new and exciting, but I'm kind of burned out on it. So the key for them is create new stars and understand that the success they're having today is not always based on what they did the last month. It's usually not. It's based on what they did the last year or two. So you want to, I'm sure there's a business term for it, a lagging indicator. It's the opposite of that. Or maybe it is that, a lagging indicator. You're getting sellouts, and it's a lagging indicator of how good you've been doing. All the good decisions made the last year or two, that can mask bad decisions you're making now that is chipping away at the fan enthusiasm. So to me, that sounds like it's not a non-answer. It's a nuanced answer that says there's not a single thing that I think they could do that would cause that. But because I think they have set up a feeder system, even in agreement with TNA, whatever, web of different reasons, motives they have for that. That helps. And the NXT system helps. The fact that AEW is in a rough spot temporarily helps because they probably aren't going to have the money to go after a lot of their top names. They'll have the budget for one or two, to compete for one or two names WWE covets, but not a ton. So I don't know. That's sort of my first answer to that topic, Jason. The bad lack of finishes. A lack of brave finishes. Fans investing in matches, and then too often Paul Levesque booking a cop-out finish. We got a clean win tonight. It's not a roll-up leverage pin followed by the heel beating down the babyface who just pinned him. It's not a fluke, but it's only one step better than like a count-out, which WWE frames is not really a real win. So I'd say just be sure that when people get invested in feuds or a match in particular, you give them an outcome. Chris, what do you think?
I think actually the one thing that actually helps WWE maintain this momentum is the lack of house shows, because they're not coming to a market as often as they used to, which for me, as someone who, my 6-year-old daughter has asked me now, we go off to Justin and I went off to GCW. She's like, can I go? And we're kind of like, no. But a WWE house show might be fun for her to go, but I have no idea when they're going to come to Columbus again, and I wouldn't take her to a TV show that would be endless and a lot more sitting around. But I think from a touring area, and the fact that they're also doing some of the PLEs in Europe where they're hot, they're going to the U.S. cities less and less. And right now that's more likely to have people being more excited to go to the shows, because now they only come twice a year. They used to come 4 times a year. And in the interim, that'll help sales and interest.
Jason, your thoughts on what Chris and I had to say?
I definitely agree with what both of you had to say, especially Chris with the house shows, obviously. I did say both.
I'm totally fine. I just had to.
I know.
Act like you hurt my feelings.
Chris is the guest host, so I'm just trying to put him over a little bit more because I brought up Reggie Miller, and then I'm trying to get back into his good books.
Let Chris revel in you liking his idea better without you qualifying it, just because I gave you a hard time.
But yeah, it does make sense though. The less you see something, the more special it seems, right? So, but the reason why I asked the question, Wade, is that it just seems like every week sell out, or 15,000 people here, 50,000 for the Royal Rumble. I mean, these are tremendous numbers, and as obviously someone for yourself who's followed the business for over 40 odd years, and myself 30 odd. As a fan of WWE, I want their momentum to continue on, but I'm just intrigued to know. I'm always thinking about, what patterns are they picking up? You talk about social media, right? And you've often talked about how do you put a value on social media? How do you put a value on the amount of times you've been seen? This has been seen by 2 million views on Instagram or whatever. To me, the value in social media is branding. Like, it's not a call to action type of marketing. It's just branding and keeping your name out there.
Yeah.
And you really can't put a monetary value on that, and you really can't measure it, but you'd rather be out there in the atmosphere, so to speak, or in the ether, as opposed to not being out there. So I suppose just keeping the name out there and keep reminding people that they exist does have somewhat of a value, even though you can't directly measure it. So
it's why at every baseball game, or stadium over the years, there's like a Coca-Cola sign. It's like,
correct,
you're not necessarily more likely to buy Coca-Cola, but Coke wants you to associate their brand with Americana baseball and a good time that you had outdoors with your family and friends. And that's why. So yeah, I mean, there's other examples of that, but it's like people know Coke exists, but they perpetually want to. The old social media was signs at baseball stadiums. You want people thinking about the brand during times where they can't, in a way where they can't avoid seeing the brand, and it just sort of becomes embedded as part of Americana. Vince McMahon talked about that. He wanted WWE to be part of Americana, part of pop culture. And so you're right, Jason, social media awareness, I think it has other positives besides this, but it absolutely makes the brand feel like this just immersive part of today's pop culture.
And just one final note before I go, I enjoyed your conversation with Stephanie, and you're talking about potential WrestleMania main events. It's interesting right now, this time last year, we pretty much knew that it was going to be Cody versus Roman and Seth versus CM Punk. Now, obviously, Punk got injured. That changed everything. But leading into the Royal Rumble, we had an idea of the 2 big matches that they were going to go for, right? Right now, we got no idea, really. And, I find that intriguing. And to me, you've got like, 7 guys that you have to find maybe 2 or 3 matches out of. Obviously, you've got Cena, Reigns, Cody, Punk, Gunther, Drew. Did I mention Seth? But there's about 7 or 8
There's
guys.
so many names that happens
Yeah.
to me, Jason. I list them and then I forget who I said at the beginning. There's so many.
Yeah, but that's what I'm.
Rock, who might
And then The Rock, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm talking about. Is like, what matches are we seeing for WrestleMania? And I know you had this conversation with Stephanie, and I'm trying to, in my head, put it all together. But there's just various ways they can go. And the only match that I feel like is the match that I really want to see, and that actually, and then throw in Logan Paul because he's going to have something to do with it. The only match that I really want to see that I feel like makes sense, and I mentioned this last week, is Cena versus Gunther. I think that's just a story that plays into itself for the championship. But any other match, I think it's all out there because they've teased Cody versus Roman. Is it Cody versus Punk? I mean, who do you see Cody against? I don't want to see Cody and Cena. You got to find something for Drew. You got to find something for Seth. I'll be fascinated to know what they have penciled in, if they have any idea of the top 3 to 4 matches, because right now, to me, everything's up in the air.
Chris, I talked with Stephanie last week about it. Jason ran down some things. I think they have some tough choices to make. When Jason says you got to find something for Drew, I mean, they will, but I could imagine Drew feeling like I'm getting leftovers again. I'm not a priority. But when you look at the list of, Cena, maybe The Rock, certainly Roman Reigns, Cody, CM Punk, Seth, Gunther, the current world champion. I mean, there's so many people who feel in urgent need for different reasons to be prioritized in a big WrestleMania match near the top of the card. Do you have a sense of the lineup, what the top 2, 3, 4 matches are going to be better than Jason and I seem to?
I think, well, first of all, I think it's very good to have this problem. It's better to have a problem of too many people to put in the big matches than not having enough.
Yeah.
And the issue to me, the over thing that I can't escape from is The Rock, as I mentioned before. All these things are great, but if The Rock wants to be in a big match, I have no idea what his movie schedule is. But if he's training currently, he probably have to start training soon to be in a match in 3 months. But that could usurp everything. I think, they're having the Elimination Chamber before the WrestleMania, so that's going to determine one title. I'm thinking that part of me has been thinking that CM Punk is going to win the Rumble. I don't know why, but I think he's going to win the Rumble, and he would challenge Cody, and that would leave a babyface, maybe Cena, as Jason established, to wrestle Gunther, and then I would put maybe The Rock versus Roman Reigns. I think they're going to do that match. They can get to it now, and yeah, I don't see. I mean, one of the things we didn't mention was Drew said to Seth that we should be on the same. In other words, we should be on the same team and we should be together. So you may see them get together as a team of some type. But there's so many possibilities. I think to be, this may be a horrible answer, but really the Royal Rumble will help tell us, because that will solve one person who I assume will wrestle Cody, and then the rest will go from there.
That's a good answer right at the end there. You're like, well, the Royal Rumble will tell us more of what we need to know. Yes. I love that. All right, Jason, back to you.
Just before I go, I do have one dark horse match, like an attraction match, although somebody has to go over, but Bron Breakker versus Jacob Fatu.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Because they teased that a few weeks ago. Remember when they had
I think it's right.
A stare down?
I think it feels. I think some people would say that we're not ready for that yet. I think that's a match you can go back to, later. But I think there's a lot of intrigue about if those two. I mean, they're so different in that they're almost mirror images in certain ways too, in terms of just feeling tightly wound and young in the WWE environment, with their whole future ahead of them, and a sense of danger to how they wrestle and their personality, kind of a on edge nature to their approach to things. Chris, what do you think of that as a, I don't even know what that's, I don't know, Jason, what'd you call it? Not a dark horse, but a match.
Well, I call it, it's probably not a special, I don't know. I would call it, I would be fine with calling it a special attraction. I mean, with Jacob Fatu, you can see they're getting more confidence giving him the mic. He's taking more I guess, more of a leadership role. You could see him filling in the void that Solo's left behind. I think they're feeling confident with him. You can easily see these two having a moment in the Royal Rumble and then taking it from there. So that is a WrestleMania main event. That's not a main event, but that is a WrestleMania worthy match. Yeah,
it's not main event yet, but in a year or two it could be. What do you think, Chris, of that?
I'm actually going to disagree and say actually as a matter they should wait, only because it would very easily get lost in the shuffle. Unless Jacob Fatu really established himself as a singles wrestler, or maybe he cost Braun the title, the Intercontinental title some way. I just think that there's so much going on and they're not really interacting other than that one moment, which is really not really about Braun and Jacob. It was more about them trying to make sure Jey Uso lost the Intercontinental title. I would just keep some things in the background for later. So I would hold off on that.
Is the path of least resistance? Now we're straying a little bit too much from around here, probably, but I mean it is the season. Sadler version 3 says, I think it's Cena Gunther headlining night 1. Cena can win the 17th title there. Then if that happens, then is it Punk and Roman, or Punk and Cody? I'm trying to think of other people who are in play. And I hate to do this, but sometimes, when we get stuck and we're like, well, there's this wrestler who's not included. There's a possibility of 3-way and 4-way matches where they, there's enough, they're building up enough where you go, well, I don't know. I kind of like Cody, but I kind of like Roman, but I kind of like Seth, but I kind of, so we could end up with something like that too, where Rock, and I don't think Cena would be in a 4-way. I think Cena's in a 1-on-1 match, and that'd probably be Gunther, but I could see Punk, Roman, Cody, Rock or not. And maybe they don't know if Dwayne Johnson's going to be available yet because he's doing his own thing and making him wait, like a boxer not coming out right away when the challenger's in the ring. He's just making him wait because he knows he can, and it'll be a 4-way or a 3-way depending on Rock's decision, but that helps them hedge. So I just hate to throw that out there because I'd rather they commit to 1-on-1 matches, but that's also a possibility there. And Sadler version 3 just goes, does Punk have to main event this year? I assume he has around the next 1 to 2 years, so maybe he doesn't headline this year. And A. Milano's pitching for Jacob Fatu versus Roman. They got some heavy lifting to do storyline-wise to get there. That feels more SummerSlam or something later. Anyway, Jason, back to you. You can comment on that or change subjects or say goodbye.
No, I only mentioned Braun versus Jacob because that to me is a WrestleMania event. But I completely look what Chris is saying. You could hold that off. You know what I mean? Yeah, but if they're looking to bring the two, I'm just thinking if Braun Breaker's still the Intercontinental Champion, you have to build someone up for him, and he's kind of in this tweener role. Jacob Fatu established himself as more of a killer heel. It's going to be intriguing to see because you have to find something for them too. I mean, they have to be on the card too. This is what we're talking about. There's so many people that sort of have to be on the card. And I guess for me, look, here's the thing, right? If Cena goes over Gunther and wins that championship, there's nothing stopping from Gunther then defeating Cena in a rematch. So he'll get his victory back. You know what I mean? So to me, it's just, I can just see the promo battle between them when Gunther talking about, Cena, you are the epitome of this entertainment and all the rest of it, all the merchandise you sell. Then Cena can fight back at him, get a bit more serious. To me, of all the matches to put Cena against and Gunther, to me, that's the big match right there. Gunther is the perfect opponent for Cena for WrestleMania.
I like CM Punk against Gunther, but they're not dropping hints of that. But I also do like Cena against Gunther. Chris, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think CM Punk versus Gunther is the best match for Cena. Cena needs to wrestle a straight heel that Gunther is. Also, Gunther's gimmick of like talking down his opponent, I think would be really good with Cena. So, yeah, I agree.
And he's established himself as the dream crusher. Like he said, he crushes the dreams. He wants to crush Cena's dreams and all of Cena Nation. Like he can get right into it, So, but as far as Punk is concerned, my only concern about Punk and Roman, the only reason Punk would want to wrestle Roman is because Roman's in the main event. Because Punk's whole thing is about being in the main event of WrestleMania, not necessarily winning the championship. It's just all about getting into that main event. So that's another interesting wrinkle for him. Yeah. And he's never that's what he wants. He just wants to be that last match so he can tick that off.
Yeah. Are you the main event to WrestleMania if the title's not on the line and you just get a legacy star type slot? I don't know. Yeah. I guess
Well,
that would count.
Kevin Owens was the main event against Stone Cold a couple of years ago.
That was very rich of him to bring that up and frame it that way. Cool. And by the way, Sadler version 3, as far as Gunther goes, says, I'm happy they went back to Gunther as a pure heel. It was too early for him to be a face. Still don't know what they were doing there, but hopefully the Dom match shook them out of whatever weird state of mind they were thinking about Gunther being a babyface at this point. Darrell, by the way, says, I think Gunther will lose the title way before the Rumble because they're trying to make his title bigger and it seems to not be going anywhere. Plus, I also think they build Raw around Punk. So, when we talk about WrestleMania, we have to keep in mind, of course, there can be injuries. It doesn't seem likely with the schedule, but it can happen. But especially the champion might be different by then. I think Cody still has a belt, but Gunther seems like a real candidate to not be champ by then. And that can change Gunther's role from seeming like, well, it has to be the main event in the last match on one of the two shows. Not that it has to be, because we've got women's titles to defend too, and they, if it feels worthy, they want to headline one of the nights with a women's match, and that can take away Punk's ability to main event WrestleMania even more. Because I don't think Cena has to be in the main event. I think Roman wants to be, one way or the other. Yeah, a lot of imagine Paul Levesque, all the things he has to consider when he's putting the show together. Jason, anything else?
No, that's it. I'll leave it there. Thanks, Wade. Thanks, Chris. Speak to you guys soon.
Appreciate it. Good talking to you.
Knicks.
Go Reggie. And Regis. All right. This Dan emailed. He said, I'm a VIP member, Dan here. I'll be watching Raw live. Haven't watched yet, but I want this topic. Let me look here. However, this topic is almost guaranteed to be relevant for the post show. In kayfabe, why are Roman Reigns and to a slightly lesser extent CM Punk bothering to enter the Rumble? Roman could surely request a rematch with Cody whenever he wanted. Why does he need to win the Rumble to be number one contender? And Punk, he's beaten two top stars, a War Games match, and a War Games match in the last 5 months. Surely he could just get a title match by interrupting Gunther like Jey Uso did. Do they need to be stricter and more consistent on this, or am I expecting too much? Love the show. I'll listen tomorrow. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. If you can pick a topic like this that will apply, feel free, even if you're not watching the show, to contribute that way. I get what he's saying, but I think it's baked into the culture of WWE, and fans have bought in that getting a title shot at WrestleMania is a more prestigious, by a pretty wide margin, position to be in than getting a title shot on a Science main event like Jey Uso's getting, or a different pay-per-view, even SummerSlam, although SummerSlam's number 2 probably. And so the Rumble isn't just a way to get a title shot that you might be able to get otherwise through other means. It's a way to get a title shot on the biggest show of the year, in front of the biggest crowd, or one of the biggest crowds of the year, and be part of a show that is propped up in history more than, Royal Rumble title matches or a Sunday's main event match like Jey Uso is getting. So I think that kind of explains it. And then number 2, they don't really explicitly say that. It's sort of just implied. But the way people get title shots is sort of scattershot, Chris. There isn't that. So you can make an argument they should make it more so, but that can tie you down as a booker. I'm for structure. I'm for explanation. I make no secret about that. But you only want to go so far with it. As Tony Khan found out with his rankings. Like, it sounds fun in theory until you think about, you have to book every finish with your rankings in mind, so that the rankings you put out match the win-loss records, which totally ties your hands as a booker. And you might want to get some people a win, but you don't want them to necessarily get a title shot yet, because you want them doing something else. It's a headache. So WWE probably, Chris, doesn't want to get too into the weeds on drawing attention to the lack of consistency and logic to how people get title shots, and just, it's not gaslighting, but just basically have wrestlers go out there and act like that is their ticket. That and Cena even said it. There's multiple ways to get there. The Rumble, and the Elimination Chamber, I guess Money in the Bank too, are ways to kind of determine your own destiny when you're not at the mercy of a GM decision.
Yeah, I agree. I wish there was more of a standard way of people getting title shots. I miss, again, when I was a kid and you kind of saw someone on a trajectory to become the champion, kind of away from the title, away from the champion, and suddenly when they fought, you're like, yes, this person deserves to win because they've been a lot of top contenders. But wrestling isn't like that anymore, unfortunately. and the WWE does have the crutch of the Royal Rumble being a high-profile event. A lot of people want to win just to be a Royal Rumble winner, and by winning, what it means by you going to WrestleMania and being in the main event wrestling for one of the world titles. So I think it's one of those things where they don't want to draw attention to it, but I wish there was a more standard way, because it is kind of, if your goal was to be the champion, theoretically you'd want it to be at any time. You could get it, but
Yeah.
I understand that wrestling logic isn't always the logic that we use in other places.
No. I'm for anytime you can inject logic and structure into the ecosystem of how you tell your stories, do it so that you have a little more leeway when it's totally inconvenient to do it. And because then you just build up some goodwill with fans and all that. But all right. Up next, another email here. Again, wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com if you want to be part of the mailbag segment of the show. Chris Rucker says, no idea what the plans are for Mania. Nor do we. But put the world title on Jey Uso on Saturday night. Don't waste his popularity like they've done with so many others. Gunther isn't hitting the way he did as IC champ. So I think someone in the chat, too, had said, just give Jey the title. When you watch, we're using Raw as a springboard to talk about WrestleMania, but let's talk about Raw specifically tonight in relation to Chris's question, which is that ring entrance for Jey. Now, Michael Cole in about a second and a half almost ruined it for me. But that ring entrance for Jey is so high energy. It is such a fun spectacle to watch. The fans just reveling and yeeting and it feels like Jey is one of the biggest breakout stars since like Stone Cold Steve Austin in terms of, or Sami Zayn in Montreal, but it's every city for Jey. Do you, if you're WWE, give any consideration to just going, yeah, let's make Jey champ. Let's build one of the. He doesn't have to headline night one of WrestleMania. He can open night one of WrestleMania defending the world title because that's Rhea Ripley. It's going to be Rhea Ripley's night to headline, or whatever. Do you think Jey is worth giving the title to? Because other people made the argument he got his ring entrance is popular, but his matches aren't main event, and it's a little bit of a mirage that he's as over as he is because it doesn't always carry over to his matches. Although when he was. There's times where Jey has been part of a match where fans have been really invested in the outcome, but there's other times where it's been a little bit of a letdown. So yeah, what do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I don't think he should win the title. His entrance is really spectacular, and it does sort of signify him as a big star. The way the crowd is behind him, the way he's high-fiving like kids as he walks down and doing the dance with them. As one of the people put in the chat, the Michael Cole did try to kill it by being ridiculous, as Wade Barrett pointed out, and we could see on our screen. But yeah, I just don't think for him, this is almost going back to the territory days where like your big local star is your local star, but that doesn't mean they should be the world champion. I think there are a lot more ways you can go with Gunther as champion. If he won the title, kind of similar to the IC, it would really be a transition to someone else, like another heel beating him, and leading to them wrestling someone else. And so I don't think there are as many ways you could go with him as champion as you could do with Gunther. Though you could have a very good moment at Saturday Night's main event with it, but it would really be short term.
Sadler version 3 says Cole McAfee'd that Jey entrance for me tonight. Cole McAfee'd that Jey entrance for me today. It's the first time I rolled my eyes at Cole since Vince got out of his ear. I think you missed a couple opportunities along the way, Sadler, to roll your eyes at Cole since Vince got out of his ear. But yeah, that was massive dorkiness. Junaid on the Jey topic says Jey is worth giving the title to. The fans love him. His merchandise numbers are the fourth best in the company, and he's at least good in the ring. It's not like pushing 2010, I think, WWE Sin Cara to the top. I think that, Junaid, that just sort of goes against what Chris is saying and others. Just because you're popular doesn't mean you have to be world champ at main event. Like, you can be popular at a certain water level, and it's not disrespectful to not end up over pushing you. 2012 Sin Cara. Okay. Well, 2010 was close. You just said 201. I'm like, I know there was 205 live, but there wasn't 201 live. So I don't know what the 201 was. But sometimes it's like it's actually sort of not cruel, but just counterproductive for someone's popularity to put them in a position where now you position them higher than fans see them. People love Jey, but I don't know that they necessarily want to go to a PLE and wait around for him to main event unless it's exactly the right opponent and the right story. I think he's super popular, but just a notch below that in how you want to utilize him. In fact, Standard Deviation says Jay's popularity is an argument against putting the title on him. He can play a role beneath the title while you put the title on someone else. Durrell says, have Jey win and then have Punk use his favor with Paul to get a match with him, bringing it all together. Also, people got to stop saying he's just an entrance when fans follow him more than Gunther. Anthony Foster said, it's simply not time for Jey right now. The top of the card is too strong. But Junaid says, the way I consider it, if Jinder Mahal could be world champ, Jey Uso can, even if just for a month or so. Junaid, do not inject Jinder Mahal into any kind of argument in favor of doing anything. When I saw Jinder Mahal's name, I saw that before I saw what you said. Otherwise, I'm like, oh, this is an argument against giving Jey the title, because Jinder was overpushed, and that's all anyone thought about him after he got the world title run. Like, honestly, like anybody, I'm going to make this declarative statement. Nobody thought of anything about Jinder Mahal after he got the title other than he was overpushed. And they used that against him. He had no value anymore at a lower level because people just looked at him and go, he was the guy who got overpushed because of the India connection and his muscles and his friendship with Triple H, or, whatever people assumed or thought was the case. If Jey gets overpushed, that can actually hurt him. And people can go, oh, yeah, that's the guy who fans liked, but they didn't like him that much. Or they didn't like him in that. You can like someone and like someone not in that way. Romantically, friendship, whatever. Also, world title. Chris, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I agree. I think, and it's funny. I've seen him now wrestle Roger Desi on the Independence, a different side of him. He also said how big he is compared to a lot of people on the Indies, but I think he actually that kind of hamstrung him because he was always seen as sort of like an accidental champion, and it was hard for him to recover from that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But they got something with Jey, and I mean, I'm not saying don't look for ways to. He should be a priority for them on a week-to-week basis to find something relevant to do. They have something special with him. Just doesn't mean it has to be world title level. But I think they know that. I mean, I think that's where when I say know that, it makes it sound like it's a factual, like, knowable thing. I think Paul Levesque and company believe what we're kind of framing here, which is we love Jey, but just because he's getting the biggest pops and these great crowd reaction shots, which they filmed wonderfully on Netflix and just in general do, they also know it's not quite right. So anything else on Jey, Chris?
No, I think that's pretty much it. As I said, I think he's done a really good job as someone that's seen him as, just I couldn't recall which twin he was, however many years ago.
Yeah,
he's done a really great job. And I think it's really important of, star making and how, he's worked his way into be someone that the fans can take to.
I think they did a really nice job promoting Jey did a really good job promoting his match against Gunther, though. I mean, I think, they're serving multiple masters on Raw. They want to, make Netflix seem like it's a priority, and they've got to build the Rumble and WrestleMania, but they also had to build Saturday Night's Main Event. And it's a little awkward on Netflix because they're not an NBC Universal partner. So it's broadcast worldwide or nationwide on Saturday night, and they don't push the NBC as much as they do on SmackDown when it's a USA Network as a NBC Universal property, so to speak. All right.
He's also a good opponent for Gunther because he's like a man of the people, and Gunther thinks better than the people. So he's actually a great opponent because he's one of the crowd. He's one of them, and so that really helps amplify his match and the crowd believing in him.
Kevin Duncan says, that's weird, says Jey is a solid Robin, but not Batman. He still gets good superhero landing, but he isn't going to drive the Batmobile. I liked Gunther saying you're a useful idiot, that you're just on call for Jimmy and Sammy and Cody. And I mean, it gets to what you're saying, because Gunther is so cruel in the way that he looks down at people that Jey, as a man of the people type underdog, is someone who fans are going to rally behind. I think that has a chance to be a really special atmosphere. I don't know. It's not going to be Sammy Roman in Montreal, but I think fans are going to be. Gunther has done a really good job, and Jey's done a really good job building this match with tonight's segment, setting the stage or firming up the very good reason, and this goes to my babyface heel thing. Don't stray from it too much. This is an example of the formula working, and I think it's going to work. I think the crowd's going to be crazy into Jey and his near falls, and they're going to want Jey to win. They're not just going to be talking about this is awesome and fight forever. They're going to be emotionally invested in being there live to see an upset and Jey Uso crowned as champion. And they'll be crushed when it doesn't happen, and I don't think it will, but I'm not ruling it out either. Sadler version 3 notes. I like that WWE is very conservative with title changes the past 5 years. You don't see any Del Rio, Miz, Sheamus, WWE title reigns anymore. It should be prestigious. It's also an argument in favor of Jey getting a short run with a belt because they haven't done it a lot, so they might go, let's do it. The fans would like it, but let's have Gunther then, destroy him shortly thereafter and get the belt back or transition it to somebody else. Okay. New Day tonight. Finally got some live time on Netflix. We had JBL interacting with them backstage, and then we had a Kofi Ray match, which Ray won in 11 minutes when Ray countered a Kofi boom drop, but then there was an attack afterwards, and then of all people, Joaquin Wilde and Cruz del Toro made the save, which is like, okay, that's sending a signal New Day are not a top-tier act. But I find Xavier and Kofi way more entertaining right now in their current heel role, Chris, than where they had been, and they seem to be having a lot of fun with it. What do you think? What do you think tonight of how they were featured?
I thought they were great as heels. I was actually expecting them to win, or Kofi to win. I thought I would have done it a different way. I would have had Xavier cheat and have him win that way. Instead, I mean, he got caught out of nowhere from Ray, but obviously they were able to get some of their heat back by beating. I can't remember if it was which one of the LWO that they ended up posting, but I think I was trying to think. Kofi Kingston, I don't know if he ever was a heel in WWE. He's been there for around the time Matt Morgan was Hulk Hogan's protege, that long. And the fact as you put up with the comment, the fact that he wasn't wearing his tights, that he actually wrestled as a different wrestler, shows a change in character that's really important.
Yeah, Sadler version 3 said, Kofi wrestling in the very stereotypical black jeans and elbow pads made me laugh. LOL. One small critique, but I don't think they should have done a leverage pinfall in the opening match and the closing match. This is like, a counter of a big move. Gray was countering a Kofi boom drop and leveraged his shoulders down for a 3 count. And then, it's kind of how the main event ended too, where Seth landed a jackknife cover and got a leverage 3 count after Drew had, landed a future shock DDT. So it felt a little too similar, and that goes to what you're saying. And maybe it's important for New Day to get a win. However they get, if you try to establish New Day as heels, having them cheat to win when fans have not seen them cheat to win over the years, there's a novelty to that where it would have worked this week. And I know Paul Levesque would just be pulling his hair out going, I gave you a clean finish, and now you're saying you want heels to cheat to win. And with, they tease the distraction.
Yes,
Do it.
I want heels to cheat to win. One of my favorite parts of the show, which is the only I noticed because I watched independent wrestling, was when Nia Jax got back in the ring at 9. Because I watched far too many matches where people lay on the floor until 9 and then dive in the ring and then lay on the ground mat. The fact that she actually got in at 9 and not the last second for me was one of my highlights.
I like that. I like that observation. I like that stood out. Anything else on New Day and what they did with them tonight, Chris?
I thought JBL is in TNA. He's lariating everyone. I thought that was going to lead to that as part of the finish if they were going to lose, but they just need to find a way because they lost. There needs to be some sort. I don't know if they're going to do a tag team match against the LWO. That's what they're probably setting up against. But I think they just need to win their next match by cheating. Yep.
Although they shouldn't have to cheat to beat the LWO, given how LWO have been portrayed. So maybe a clean win, and then they have to cheat to beat somebody more who's getting a bigger push. Kevin, that's weird. Kevin Duncan says, I want to hear their new theme music. They berated WWE for playing their old music, but what's the reveal of the new jam? Do they end up with new music? What if it's like Don Callis and it's just this noise?
No, I hope so. I think I like the fact that they've strung this out for so long. that, and they show the different people. Like, no, we are not the same people we were whenever that was with Big E 6 weeks ago, whenever that was. We don't wrestle the same. We don't have the same ring attire. We don't have the same music. We don't like the fans. We are different people. I think they should definitely come out with that at some point, but hopefully it's not something that is screeching to people's ears.
Yes. Their music could just be like the way fans rebelled against New Day, because it was just so like, there's a better word that I'm going, but like just so syrupy sweet, like, it's a new day and we're gonna inspire you, and it was just like almost a children's TV show thing, and the fans just rejected it. It was just so like tone deaf in how just over the top it was, and so they could counter by just being even more over the top in some way, where fans are like, "Are you serious?" Where you don't want to steal Kevin Owens' gimmick, where it's like this sort of, I guess, gaslighting the fans into pretending that the whole false pretensing of I'm a good guy, but it's all selfish. But I suspect. Well, I hope they've had a brainstorming session about different things they can do with their music, because it could just very much be typical, but in a good way, heel music. But they could also just be subversive and just like have the most cheesy babyface type song, because Xavier is still walking around going, "What did we do? What did we do?" So he can think, well, maybe we just needed fresh music and the fans will love us, and it's even more cheerful. Or it's some. I don't like any of these. There's nothing specific I'm coming up with that I love, but I'm just sort of spitballing the notion that there's some creativity here, in that they could have like a subtle guilt trip on the fans in the lyrics, but they have plausible deniability that that's what they're doing. So we'll see. Kevin, that's weird, says if they want to be heels, use a Fozzy song. All right. You mentioned Nia Jax. Nia Jax took on Bayley. We knew going in, Bayley's got a feud developing with Roxanne Perez. Nia Jax attacked Rhea Ripley. This was, again, clearly a time filler match on Raw, where both wrestlers were going to go a different direction afterwards. Jax got the win, which makes sense. She's feuding with Rhea. Bayley losing, less important. She's not being framed or pushed or on a trajectory to be in a main event right now. She had her title match and lost. And she's feuding with an up-and-comer in Roxanne. So booking-wise, it just felt, to me, predictable that Nia Jax was going to win. What do you think of the match, and what do you think of what they did with Nia and Ripley tonight, and also the continuation of Bayley and Roxanne?
I do think it's always funny when someone gets attacked and the camera just stays on them, and they finally got someone to help Rhea in the back. I always find that very amusing. But I think, I realized obviously that match was, Bayley has come to Raw. She's in the transfer window. They want to give Nia Jax a win, setting up her match with Rhea Ripley at Saturday Night's main event. So I think it was just there to do that. Nothing special. Obviously, Roxanne Perez got involved, but I thought my whole thing was, well, she's going to be involved in the finish, but they probably didn't want to do that because I happened at SmackDown, so they didn't want to do the same thing. But to me, I thought, and I don't remember if they didn't show that happening at SmackDown. I can't remember. I know Michael Cole just mentioned it, so I would just have done it again and give Bayley an out for losing. And also, I think, which has to come up, Bayley is now on this as one of the apologize for who mentioned up in the chat, but Bayley is now in the same side or the same show as Damage Control. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of has to be mentioned or brought up that, why can they coexist?
Yeah, I'm almost in favor of just having them coexist privately off camera and it doesn't become an on-air storyline, because I just don't think it helps remind us of what the remaining Damage Control members have been through, which is like this soft babyface turn, and then Bayley, who turned on them, but then they ended up babyface, and Bayley everything was so messy about that breakup and what they've done since then. I almost would just try not to go out of my way to remind fans that they were aligned and of that story. I don't think there's an obligation to do it. In passing, you could just say, yeah, they're getting along backstage, but they've agreed to do different things. I mean, you could have a little passing comment, and that just ties a ribbon around it. Yeah,
that'd be fine for me. I don't think they have to be rejoining or anything. It's just that you'd want, because they've changed. You just at least one point, at least acknowledge that they were together at some point. It's just you can't. I don't want them to pretend that they were never in a faction ever. That'd be a bit too much. They don't have to be aligned again.
And I don't think Roxanne's going to be in a faction, so there'd be no need for Bayley to have help from other Damage Control members who are like, bygones be bygones. We've worked out our differences or anything like that. But what could happen is just Paul Levesque. I can imagine him shooting, let's say, a Karrion Kross interview or something, or Sami Zayn interview. In the background, you see Sky and Kai chatting with Bayley, and they talk, they nod, they shake hands, maybe a little hug, and then they walk separate directions. So we have this, it's in canon, they talked it out, they're friends, but the symbolism of them moving opposite directions is, we're not hanging out, but we don't have issues anymore. We worked them out. And you can just show that in the background, and it's your way to kind of enter it into canon officially. Rude Dog says, New Day could come out to the Pointer Sisters. That would be a great troll job on Tony Khan. Before that, Derek Mitchell said maybe the New Day can go AW route and have New Attitude by Patti LaBelle. So we're getting creative here.
Love the 80s music. Would be great.
Yep. We touched on Penta. The hype. Penta has jump off the screen, charisma. LaParca is, I think, a good example. But I still argued last week that Michael Cole thought they were getting Rey Fenix and got confused between Rey Fenix and Penta. The way he talked about it, it's so flashy, you won't believe it. It's like, it's Penta. That's not his gimmick. And then Penta, it's like dark and like there's this sort of dark side to him. No, he's got his daughter crying at ringside. You have to find him as this multi-decade veteran whose dream was to work in WWE. His dream came true. His family, his daughter were there, and he's flashy and bombastic. But that's his personality now. He's a cool dad whose dream was to wrestle in WWE, and he's taking 10 to 14 minutes to beat lower mid-card guys. They're trying to send the signal he's a star, but he's also, I'll give him credit. At least he only once this week instead of 3 times last week did he play to the crowd when he had his opponent down, and then that delay led to it backfiring. That's not all I think about when I think of Penta matches, but I think about it when I think of Penta matches, is the fact that he doesn't understand you're trying to portray this as a real fight that you want to win, and not, oh, look, there's a camera. Let me play to it for 10 seconds while the heel recovers and it backfires. But he only did it once tonight. He couldn't help himself. There's something there with him, but the hype last week felt like a bit of a mismatch for who he was. And he's good, but I'm not saying he's going to be like the Bo Dallas, like the new, Wyatt Six, where they get really excited and then he just fades away. But I think they figured out in these 2 weeks they do not have a main event babyface on their hands. I think they have. I'm trying to think like a guy who's going to be fed to Braun Breaker, but lose, and kind of at that level. But he'll be around, he'll be used, he'll sell merch, but I don't think in these 2 weeks I've come away thinking he's going to be a top guy.
Yeah, as I said, I didn't before. I don't think of him that's going to be his trajectory, which I think is okay because not everyone can be a top guy and everyone can be a main eventer. I think he has a couple good things in his stead. One, people like his mask, and I don't know if they had a lot of people in the crowd with it. I don't recall, but I know that those have been selling pretty well so far. And I actually was amused that he did the celebration with, after a move. Thankfully for him, he did it very early in the match, and so when Dunn attacked him, he didn't do it again, which is like, that actually makes sense. He does it in the first minute after the first move because he's kind of cocky, and then he learns his lesson and he moves on. Yeah, but I don't think I don't think he's supposed to be someone who next year, when you're with whoever, and you're talking about who are the 8 people that are going to be in the main event of WrestleMania, 42, and no, he's not going to be one of those people, which is fine. I don't think he needs to be. And honestly, I think the best use of him will be when him and his brother are together, whenever that is, as a tag team. And I think really what he's doing now is kind of establishing himself with the audience, and then his more I've always liked Penta. Now he's not spectacular, but the more spectacular, high spot wrestler, and his brother comes in, and then they become a top tag team.
What do you think they're doing with, you mentioned Chad Gable in a bit of an ominous way earlier, but what do you think they're doing with Dom handing Chad a note? Darrell asked, who could that be Dom sent Chad to? And tonight they made Dom feel bigger and more like a leader. Talk about the Chad Dom thing, but also, Chris, tell me what you think they're doing with Judgment Day and the Liv Dom dynamic. Who's the babyface and who's the heel in that scenario? Or are we just enjoying Liv torturing Dom a little, but we also don't like Liv?
I think it all depends on the moment. I think Liv is clearly a heel because she's very unlikable.
I think so too. Yeah.
Especially the way that a lot of men watch wrestling, they would not like her. Dominic is still a heel, but he's trying to be a little bit resourceful. There may be a way for him to be a babyface, and he has his moments, but ultimately, like him stepping up to be in the match, some could see that as a babyface moment. But ultimately, he's still a heel, and really, I think that match with the War Raiders is just going to set up kind of more Judgment Day fracture.
JC Scooby says, "I love Liv." Well, good for you, but I think she's supposed to be heel nonetheless. Big picture on tonight's show, Chris. What do you think of 3 weeks in of Raw on Netflix? I'll read a couple comments from earlier in the show. Junaid said, very solid Raw tonight, a step up from last week. Most fascinating was Sam KO, Seth Drew Bloodline stuff. BJF says, thought it was a really good show and looking forward to the discussion. And Daniel Lee said, Raw is a more consistent and less embarrassing show these days, but also a more boring show under Triple H. Yeah, so I kind of, where are you on the 2.5 hour? We're 2 weeks into that formula after the big kind of celebrity-filled, megastar-filled outlier that the premiere was. What do you think about the Netflix version of Raw compared to what we had in 2024 on USA?
I have a few thoughts. One, the usual television cadence is going to be different. While watching the show, and I think I may have been a little bit behind because I know it buffered a minute or so in, and I didn't go back, but I pretty much knew that they mentioned that Drew and Seth were the main event, and I didn't know when that match would take place. So when it started, I think around 10 o'clock, I was like, oh, okay, this is not going to go to 11 o'clock because the match they had before with Damage Control versus the Pure Fusion Collective was not announced. Just came out of nowhere, and I thought maybe they'll have another match like that. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting for fans to get out of the typical Raw's 3 hours. This happens here, this happens there. Oh, it's 10:25. It's going to be on for another 35 minutes. I think that'll be interesting. I think naturally, this is a general pet peeve I have in wrestling, and it goes back to kind of the discussion of kind of like the late 90s as like the best era of wrestling, which it was not for me. Mm-hmm. Not every television show has to be the greatest show ever. It's spectacular, change everything. The shows have to move steady along to a bigger event. In this case, the bigger events they were promoting were Saturday night's main event and the Royal Rumble. So I don't want this to be the greatest show ever, because if it is, then why would I watch the Royal Rumble? Why would I watch on Saturday? I thought I wanted to have, the TV shows need to have storyline progression, and I think it did in a lot of areas. It also set up matches for next week, like the tag team title match that we mentioned. So I think from that standpoint, it's good, but not spectacular. But for me, I don't want spectacular. I can't have spectacular every week. It just doesn't. It's not spectacular every week. Yeah.
Yep. I said it last few months. There's a lot of excitement for Raw and Netflix, but they can't. It's not. They're not going to reinvent wrestling. There's going to be some production innovations, and they have these great buildings with great camera work, great lighting, huge crowds that makes it feel big time. And I still look at it through the eyes of someone who wasn't watching WWE, and someone's going to go, "This is a hot product, and this Jey Uso guy's really over, and people love to boo Dom." Whatever. I mean, there's all the little things that people who haven't watched for a while or ever are going to take from it. But it's pro wrestling. There's a wrestling ring. There's a stage they enter. There's music. There's commentators at ringside. They fight over titles. They argue. They bicker. They talk about their past. And I mean, it's wrestling. It's a formula. There's only so much you can do with that. There's only so much you should do with it if you're having the success that WWE is having. And so it's settled into kind of what I thought it would be. Although I guess I'll say I'm surprised there's not a little bit more star power on the shows the last couple weeks. I think not having Cena, Cody, and saving him for Saturday's main event contract signing, which could have been on Raw and Netflix if SNME hadn't been a thing. It feels like it's actually not. It hasn't felt like it. I don't think anyone's saying, "Oh, WWE's just loading up Netflix at the expense of SmackDown," or "This show is too loaded." It kind of almost feels like post Survivor Series, pre Rumble Raws in December sometimes feel. It's like it's good. It's WWE. It's a hot product, but it hasn't felt like off the chart. We're giving it our all. They gave it their all the first week, and now it's just here's our normal show with a drone. Yeah.
I think. Well, they didn't announce that Cody would be there next week. Is one of the things they're teasing for next week. But I think they're having this. I think the mentality in WWE is they're pacing themselves like someone running a marathon. I always say,
which is smart. Yeah.
When I started running, my wife told me one of the problems I had was that I ran my best mile in the first mile. Because I was just like, oh, I'm excited. I'm going to run as fast as I can. And by the third mile, I was really tired. Yeah. And I didn't finish as well. So I think that they're trying to go along and lead up different things. And so they're doing slow and steady. I do. Anthony Foster put they did the Jey Uso thing took forever. They could have cut that down. And maybe they should have, that's a question. Should they have aired some of those promos that were part of the international package? Should they have aired them on the TV to make the show go 10-15 minutes longer? I don't know, but I think they're also getting into a cadence because this is a different format than they've had to do, so it's going to be a little trial and error as well.
Anthony Foster's comment in the chat was multiple segments with main event wrestlers, lots of future building, a good Punk promo, first look at a heel New Day, a long-ass intro for Jay, and announcing Cody for next week. So I think he's making the case that this was a big enough show. And I think it's a big enough show. It's not like Raw ever just feels like, AW Collision or WCW Thunder, like just total P. But they are spreading out these stars. I mean, no Heyman, no Roman, no Cody, no Cena, it's no Rock. Like I just think people thought, ooh, when Raw's on Netflix, it's going to be big stars every single week, and it's a good Raw with like you're saying, Chris. We're in this. It's a marathon. And again, I'm not surprised in the sense that I told people, prepare yourself for this not being a reinvention of wrestling. But I'm a little surprised they haven't done a little bit more to kind of keep Cody and Cena and the bloodline in the ecosystem during this vaguely defined period where wrestlers are talking to GMs about switching places, switching brands. However, Derek Mitchell says, good point. Although I don't know that WWE counter books or weighs the white flag too often. He goes, is it possible that WWE didn't load up tonight's show more because of the national championship game between Ohio State and Notre Dame? Yeah, I think, Seth Drew with a straight face, you can say WrestleMania rematch, two of our biggest stars. They can fill 20 minutes easily. But it's also not a match where we feel bad if our viewership is down. Now, I'll say I think it's less of an issue on Netflix than it was on USA because everybody who has Netflix has a DVR, like in the sense that they can watch it whenever they want. Where with cable, I don't know what percentage of people with cable and, old cable versus in streaming cable pay for or have DVR service, but it was very heavily live viewed. And so it's less of an issue now because people who are WWE fans can just watch like they do other Netflix shows, whatever they want on demand. So WWE doesn't want to just completely phone it in, and they want people to stay excited about Raw on Netflix and keep Netflix happy.
For me, I feel watching on Netflix, I was like less likely to like channel surf. Then when a commercial came on, I just and then and the time on the clock, I have 3 minutes. I'm gonna make some coffee so I don't fall asleep doing the post show, or I'm gonna make sure my daughter, we let her stay up a little bit later because no school tomorrow. Make sure she goes to sleep with that time. And I know for me watching on cable, it was like, oh, it went to commercial. What's on ESPN? What's the score of the game? What else is going on? So I think that might as well.
Kevin, that's weird. Kevin Duncan says they'll never trim the J entrance because it shows massive audience involvement. Yeah, I think it's fine the way it is because it's super high energy, choose different camera angles, whatever. But it does run the risk of overstaying its welcome, and I think that's going to come to different people in different stages. But they don't want to overdo it. But I get leaning into it now. JC Scooby says Liv's is hottest women's heel and sitting in back. I was worried it happened when she dropped the title. Was it a mistake for Rhea because she doesn't need the title? No, I think Rhea should be the centerpiece women's star in this company, and I think you should give her the title. I think Liv is fine being snarky and passive aggressive and whatever they're trying to do with her. I think Liv has landed in a good place, Chris, and I'm interested in her segments and her dynamic with Dom right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think she's in a good spot, and I think that the title run helped her to kind of get to that spot. But now I think in WrestleMania time, there are probably more different ways they can go, more possibilities with Rhea as champion.
So we were talking a little earlier about Dom and Chad. Kevin Duncan says, I think the name that Dom gave Chad was El Generico. So that, Goodfellas says that would be fun. So yeah, that'd be awesome if Chad isn't aware and goes and has a fun chat with El Generico. That'd be a little AEW-esque, or maybe a little too inside baseball. But Cole could explain it. It'd be like, oh, this is whatever. They could actually explain it to people as Chad is the butt of the joke.
He hasn't wrestled as El Generico in 9 years, 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. But if you explain it, and you don't act like, you got to be part of a secret, know the secret handshake to get it. You just have Cole go, oh, Chad's such a fool. They're playing him for a fool. He was amateur wrestling. El Generico was this, they could frame it and bring everybody in on the joke.
But also, why would Sami Zayn, who's now trying to fight for the world title, be in on this? A few months ago, maybe I could see him.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm joking around, whatever.
Yeah.
But why? I'm trying to win the world title, but no, I'm gonna.
Chris, you're ruining our fun, but you're not wrong.
Yeah. Sorry.
All right. All right. Well, go to and probably close with your JB's email. My least favorite trope in wrestling is the Rollins being mad at Sammy when it was quite clearly an accident nonsense. Totally agree. This was so obviously Sammy trying to help Seth. There's no way Seth, upon review, and he can review this or talk to someone who saw it live. Let's say all footage was destroyed and there's no video footage of it. Netflix accidentally hit the delete button. No one had their cameras out. Everyone can still vouch for Sammy. He had good intentions. So it is totally stupid that, it's one thing for Seth to glare at Sammy. I was thinking about this when the show ended. If Seth could go, Sammy, how often does that backfire? You should have known. Don't charge full speed in my direction, knowing, Drew might have moved out of the way or something. I mean, I guess he could make the argument it was reckless, but not intentional. Because Sammy's heart was clearly in the right place. So anyway, any thoughts on that, Chris?
Yeah, I just thought of it whether sport you are, it'd be hockey or basketball, a misplaced pass, and the two guys get into a fight over it. It's no, I didn't mean to pass it the wrong way. It just happened.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Totally. JB adds, Sammy has a lot of directions he could go, but one way I definitely don't want to see him head is into the Karrion Kross sphere. Again, it could just be a TV, a 2-week TV program or something. I don't think it's WrestleMania bound.
Plus, it's the Rumble. People are going to be interacting that you don't see often, and you may want, that may be a spot in the Rumble that, might lead to something. So, because
that's right. Good, really good point.
So,
yeah.
People will be wrestling people that you may not think, they may not have a storyline with, they may not interact with.
So Sadler version 3 says, Sammy may not have meant it, but I'd still be pissed at a friend or family member if they accidentally socked me in the face, LOL. I would, if somebody was if I'm at a bank and a family member is at a bank and somebody's about to rob the bank and they go to try to knock the gun out of the, I don't know how this is going to hold up by the time I'm done, by the way, just warning everybody. They try to knock the gun out of his hands, but in the process, they knock me into the, does anyone go to banks anymore in person? Maybe that people are what? I just take my phone out. This is falling apart as I go. But if someone's clearly trying to do a good deed and save your life, but it just goes a little awry and they hit me, I'm not going to hold it against you if you're trying to save my life. You thought a guy was trying to rob the place or was robbing a place with a gun. You can go, be a little more careful or use a better strategy or whatever. But I mean, he can't hold it against him in any way where it's actually intentional. Yeah. Anyway, let's see. Is WWE keeping Sami versus Seth open for WrestleMania if Punk versus Seth falls through for some reason? I don't know if I agree with the premise, and I don't think Sammy's... I mean, it's interesting Sami Seth is something they're building. We're talking about it now, but it feels more like a Royal Rumble type thing than a WrestleMania match they're building towards.
Yeah, I think they have the possibility. I mean, I know they wrestled on Raw maybe about a month ago, maybe a little bit longer than that now.
Yeah.
But I think they're having the possibility with them, and it could be where, I think Drew is helping plant the seeds of a heel Seth turn, so possibly that could be a possibility from that.
JB says, is the way that WWE has introduced Penta all that different from how AEW showcased him? Great matches with cool high spots, not a lot of psychology. I mean, he talked in English and his daughter was crying, but I mean, and Michael Cole's hyping him up, but so did Excalibur. I mean, there's something to be said for the fact that Penta doesn't have a character. He's just the latest lucha star that they're building up as the greatest thing since Rey Mysterio. Someone in the chat said when Rey debuted, he was framed as the greatest thing since Mil Mascaras. I mean, the idea that this focus on Penta is that he's a luchador, it can actually work against him. He should just be a great wrestler with a defined character that isn't based around, oh, he's a luchador. It's not. Anyway, what do you think, Chris?
I think that's one of the things that we have to see over time. I think for the first 2 weeks it was okay, could be better, but if he hasn't had any more definition in 6 weeks, then it could be a problem. But I will say that the hated trope in wrestling, we have to let it play out.
Junaid, back to the other point. Seth will understand next week that Sami didn't mean it, but 3 or 6 months from now, I think this moment might add up in Seth's mind with all the other misfortune if Seth turns heel. JC Scooby wants to know when we're going to finally settle on who's on Raw and who's on SmackDown already. It's getting annoying. I want to do a roster like chart. I want to have that on my computer screen so I know who's on what brand, and let's get to it.
Because Michael Cole didn't know what Sami Zayn was going to say, but Kevin Owens apparently did.
Yes. Was Gunther, this is back to JB, I'm all over the place here. Was Gunther a bit too spot on in his assessment of Jey as a useful idiot? I mean, Gunther's gimmick is he's pretty spot on. He's a smart heel who knows how to just like take that paper and cut, just give you that paper cut that stings. I mean, maybe it's more than that with Jey. Is that too spot on? Does that undercut how people, or does that define how people look at Jey if it's too spot on?
No, I think part of the reason why people like Jey, they don't see him that way because Gunther says it. They see him as someone who's loyal, even in difficult situations.
Yeah.
So I think part of it with being a heel, you can obviously go too far, and some other people have, is that people see heels as liars. They don't believe what they say, especially about someone that they have a lot of faith in already.
Yeah, I think in the specific, it's right. I think as a rule, you want to be careful. You don't want a heel saying something that rings so true and fans are sort of suppressing it, or they didn't really connect the dots or think that way. But it's such a moment in a promo that people are like, well, I hadn't thought of it that way. But yeah, you don't want the heel to be a little too spot on with something like that. But I think in this situation, the specifics mitigate that as a concern for me because Jey is so popular and Gunther is Gunther. I mean, that's what he does. So yeah. Okay. Chris, anything else you want to bring up? Anything else in your notes or that you're thinking about?
One more thing. The last time I was on here, we got aggregated, not for anything I did, more because of you, obviously being a top wrestling reporter. But I do want to point out one thing. I was very surprised that WWE did a MLK tribute.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that was something that I know that Vince McMahon was very big on, though people don't know that. So fine. I don't know if anyone's aggregating this or will listen from WWE, but I will say, if you're going to do an MLK tribute and you're going to have all your different wrestlers doing things with civil rights, perhaps have wrestlers that are not black to make it appear that all people care about civil rights and not just the black wrestlers.
Well put. Thank you for saying that. And that is such a good point and good advice to a largely white production and writing team. Putting those things together. Chris, anything else?
No, that'll be it for me. That's a good way for me
All
to
right.
close.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So if you enjoy what we do here, we'd love for you to support us with a VIP membership. In fact, you can try us for 7 days free at pwtorch.com/govip. Get full details. One way that you can sign up and get a 7-day free trial is by searching PWTorch VIP in Spotify or Patreon. And you can check out what we offer. You can get a show where the commercials are edited out. It just jumps right past the commercial break. So a more streamlined listening experience to these post shows and the daily casts and the Blue Logo podcasts. And you get a lot of VIP exclusive shows too. Full details and just experience it. Check it out. Search PWTorch VIP in Spotify or Patreon. You can get a full VIP membership and details on that at pwtorch.com/govip. And that gives you details on our 35 plus year library of Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter back issues with transcriptions of big name Torch talks, long form insider interviews, hard hitting editorials, cover stories chronicling the biggest story of the week in pro wrestling every week, star ratings, pay-per-view rundowns, roundtable reviews from our team of pay-per-views going back to the first SummerSlam, for that matter, in the late 1980s. An ad-free website with exclusive articles and new Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter every week. Tons come with the VIP membership. Get an overview at pwtorch.com/govip. That's pwtorch.com/govip. However you sign up, our podcasts are available and compatible with Apple Podcasts. If you sign up through Spotify, they're compatible with Spotify. And it's a single click. There's no advanced settings or passwords or complicated places to go to try to make it work. When you sign up, you get an email, and you click on the link or paste in the RSS feed, and you're in. If you get a full VIP membership, you can actually customize the feed so that the nostalgia and best of shows are in a separate feed from our current events and new shows. And I know our full VIP members ask for that and are really appreciating and liking that option. You can also subscribe to individual show feeds, so you can get all the pay-per-view roundtables, for instance, on one feed on your phone and catch up on them. We also run 18 years ago PWTorch VIP podcast vaults, where we're running down what happened in 2007 with Wade Keller hotlines and Bruce Mitchell audio shows, Real Deal with Pat McNeil's, post pay-per-view roundtables, and more. So you can kind of learn about how we were covering on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis pro wrestling back in 2007 as part of that VIP membership also. So check out details, pwtorch.com/govip. Thank you, everybody, for your support, and we will talk to you tomorrow on the flagship. Send in your questions if you got them, and also Wednesday night after Dynamite.